Global warming, a hot topic of conversation at the moment. I don't mean that as a pun either. This is a view from the UK, my view from the UK, not everybody's view from the UK, I'm very much sure of that. I know this would be shown in the US, I suppose, but a lot of the time, but this is a UK idea. We just had a report over here commissioned by the government called the Stern Report, which had some very stern warnings. Another pun, I'm afraid, didn't intend that one. Basically, this was written by a businessman rather than a scientist, I suppose, so it's held a lot more weight than a lot of others that have happened before. And what the guy was saying there, Mr. Stern was saying, was that if we don't spend a little bit of money now, part of our gross domestic product, as they say, the GDP, 1% I believe was the figure that he used. I don't know what that equates to in billions of pounds or even dollars. And what he's suggesting is that if we spend that 1% now, it will save us up to, I think it was 20% of our gross domestic product, possibly in the years to come. My point with that, I know governments can legislate a lot. Governments can legislate, and lots of people would be against that because generally that means taxes, whether they be green taxes, stealth taxes. Tax is tax, isn't it? Nobody likes tax. Whether it be in the UK, the US or anywhere in the world, nobody likes tax. And what we all feel, I'm sure, deep down is that the governments are getting us to pay to get out their mess, if you see what I mean. You know, they got us into this mess. They've had enough warnings over the last 20-30 years about global warming and the imminence of it coming, and they haven't done anything about it for whatever reason. I know that they've claimed that the science hasn't been right and that sort of thing, but the consensus of opinion now surely shows that the balance of probabilities are that we are going to suffer global warming. In fact, we're already suffering. I know for a fact that over the last 10-15 years the climate in Britain has changed noticeably, as far as I'm concerned. The way that autumn comes later. November in Britain isn't like it used to be. November in Britain, I'm sure it's the same elsewhere. Spring comes earlier every year. Winter doesn't seem to have the same effect that it did. We've got birds nesting all through the year. We've got flowers sprouting all over the place. We're also seeing other effects of it. We've seen rising sea levels in some parts of the South Pacific. I think it is some of the islands there. People are even starting to move off of those islands now, the atolls, etc., because the water is rising. We've seen more severe storms than we've ever had in the past, whether they be hurricanes, especially in the US, but storms over here now are more violent, the winds are stronger, the rain's stronger, and we get heavier rain, more concentrated rainfall, etc. So all the signs are there. I know people still don't believe in this, and people will always sort of poo-poo the idea. Maybe they've got their reasons for doing that, I don't know. But the way I look at it is, yes, we can let the politicians do it, but we can do it ourselves, or at least partially do it ourselves. Lead them, show them the way, because a lot of politicians are tied up with their political parties. They know that it's not a vote winner to put taxes up, is it? Never will be, never has been. Anybody who says they're going to put taxes up, they're going to lose a hell of a lot of votes through doing that. So it's not in their interest to do it. I know they all think it's a serious matter now, especially in the UK, but unless there's a consensus of opinion, and I do hate that word consensus, but unless there is a consensus of opinion, it's not going to happen, because one party won't say it and the other party doesn't, etc. You know, no, and all that sort of rubbish. They're just a bunch of kids a lot of the time, aren't they? But we can do it ourselves. And this is something that always amazes me, that governments, whether it be ours over here or elsewhere, don't actually push this a lot more than they could do. Because my opinion being that if we did it ourselves, and the various ways of doing this, we can insulate our houses better, we can buy low energy light bulbs, we can buy more fuel efficient cars, we can use our cars less than what we used to, we can walk a bit more than what we used to, and we get an added bonus that we will actually increase our fitness levels and that sort of thing, and our obesity levels, etc., throughout the world as well in that respect. So we can all do this sort of thing, and ultimately that will save us money. And this is the big thing. If we do it ourselves, if we do these sort of fuel efficient measures, whether they be, say, with your cars, insulating your house, turning your central heating down just that little bit than what we did before, and the insulation helps, get a new boiler, that sort of stuff for your central heating. It all saves us money, so it's a win-win situation. So we can do it ourselves, we can save ourselves money, and we can do our little bit to help the environment. Okay, we can go further and we can get the solar energy panels, and we can get little wind turbines to put on our houses or our workplaces, etc. And if we all did that, then the price of those would come down. And that's one of the points of legislation that can be useful. If governments do legislate and say, right, an X amount has got to be taken off the CO2 emissions by the year, whatever, 2020, should we say, as a figure out of the sky. It will force companies, it will force businesses to actually invent new technologies, and I think California's sort of pointed the way in that. I do believe, I could be wrong, but I do believe they've started the ball rolling in that respect and saying they want to decrease their emissions, and by doing that you will actually kickstart a new economy. You will kickstart, new technologies will be brought into place, inventions will come along. So any jobs that might be lost by the sort of petrochemical industries, the oil industries and the gas industries and that sort of thing can be made up for by the new industries that will come along, like the internet and all that has come along and replaced other old industries that have been around before. It will help. It's not a bad thing. So it is a win-win situation in that respect. Don't forget though, we have to do this in some respects. We've got to find new technologies, we've got to find new energy sources, because the oil and the gas is not going to run, it is going to run out. It's not going to be there forever. It's a finite resource. It's never going to be there for all time. We've got to remember that, and I think a lot of people sort of lose sight of that, possibly through the influences of the oil companies themselves. They've obviously got a lot of clout and a lot of money behind them, and they've got their own interests at heart, and I can see where they're coming from on that. But ultimately, that oil is not going to last forever. I know there's still a lot out there, and we might even find some new oil and gas, etc., in reserve somewhere or other. But if we don't go down that road, we can actually save some pristine wildernesses, can't we, from potential destruction by oil companies going in there and digging it all up again. So I think it's a win-win situation. We don't have to rely on others, do we? I know there's lots of other arguments. If we create our own energy sources, we don't have to rely on other countries. Over here in the UK, that's a big debate, because we pump in gas from Norway and from Russia as well, and from right across Europe. Gas is pumped across now. If there's a political situation there, they might turn it off, mightn't they? It's a good way of getting one-upmanship against the British or any other European company. They just turn the tap and we haven't got any gas. So it's in our interest, once again, to create our own energy sources. There's plenty of free energy out there, whether it be solar energy, wind energy, wave energy, hydroelectric power, if you want to go down that route as well. Even opened the nuclear debate here in the UK as well fairly recently. So in my opinion, it's a win-win situation. We can't lose by doing it. I know there's detractors. People will say, well, what about the developing world? What about Asia? What about China? What about India? Well, if we help them by selling them our technology, which once again will increase our exports and will help our governments and our companies and the jobs, etc., and the economy generally, we can sell them all our technology so that they can use solar power. I'm sure India has got a great use for solar power. The sun's a bit stronger over there. It could actually help over there. It would save them a lot of time, a lot of money. It will keep their emissions down. So once again, it's a win-win situation. We have other detractors who say, well, I don't believe in this global warming. It may never happen. It isn't happening. I don't believe it. That's fine. So if we go along with, we change the things as I'm suggesting. We invest in renewable energies, and we create new technologies, and we haven't lost anything, because ultimately the oil will run out. But if we do nothing, and those people are wrong, and global warming is coming along, well, what are we going to tell our children? What are we going to tell our grandchildren? One of the things from the report that came out was a predicted rise of up to 5 degrees in the global temperatures. Now that's the maximum. I accept that, and I suppose that may never happen. But one of the interesting facts, if you want to call it, or frightening facts, if you look at it another way, a rise of 3 degrees, and that's the midpoint of what they're saying could happen. So we're looking at an average figure here. A rise of 3 degrees would apparently melt the Greenland ice sheets, ice cap, or whatever they call it up there in Greenland. A 7-metre sea level rise, which would flood Florida. There you go. So, and lots of other countries and lots of other cities as well. So if you want to see Florida flooded, and I don't, because I like Florida, and all the enormous damage that would cause both economically and personally as well, well, don't do anything. So don't bury your head in the sand. Have a think about it, if nothing else. Have a look at the figures, have a look at all the science that's out there, and just think, I can do my little bit anyway. Even if you don't believe it, it won't do you any harm, and it may even save you money. Ultimately, it may save your life. Anyway, thank you very much. Goodbye.